The Pan-African Media Research Organization started in 1999 with representation from only 13 countries. Today, 22 years later, the Media Research Organization boasts over 800 members and counting across 27 countries on the continent. Celebrate PAMRO's research expertise across Africa by becoming a member today.
A very good morning and welcome to the 2021 PAMRO Virtual Conference. My name is Sia Sangweni, again, your Master of Ceremonies. What an absolute honor and privilege. Thank you so much for having us on. Can't believe this is day number 3 of 3. You know, it really did fly by. If you've been with us since day 1, thank you so much for doing so. If you've just joined us today, I'm slightly judging you, but still, you're more than welcome. But let me also tell you, you've missed out on so much fun and learning. We've already covered topics and speakers like the Dutch National Media Research. We've looked at things like a multi-dimensional consumer segmentation tool just specifically for South Africa. We've looked at topics like disruption, crypto, load shedding, and a whole bunch of great research insights as well. So this year, PAMRO still is celebrating its 22nd year in action and still packing quite a punch, because day 3 is going to be all of that and so much more. So if you do want to get in on the action, please do use the hashtag PAMRO21 on social media. Specifically on Twitter, you can use the handle at PAMRO_org, or then please make use of our live chat. That's where you can send us your questions, your comments, and you can also interact with our speakers. If our speakers don't have the time to respond to you live, they'll do so in due course. So there's no excuse not to engage with us. Furthermore, we do welcome anyone joining the PAMRO family. So you can get more information by going onto the PAMRO website. That's www.pamro.org, or you can also get more information there on becoming a member. So all sorted, all get up for the next day as we finally wrap things up here. Let's make things happen. I do want to take a quick mention to say thank you so much to all of our sponsors and partners who've collaborated with us to make this conference a success. So a big, big thank you goes out to Telmar, Nielsen, Ornico, DSTV Media Sales, Borderless Access, Plus 94 Research, and Ipsos. You guys, I have said it and I'll continue reiterating, are nothing short of rock stars. So let's get day 3 underway. A lot of exciting topics to cover, such as digital transformation in Africa, trust in advertising, quite an apt and timely topic, announcing the best paper award. I know a lot of people are waiting with bated breath with that one, and so much more. So, you know, our first research paper is done by someone who's definitely no stranger to the PAMRO family. Not only is he the current president of PAMRO, but he's also the CEO and involved in Plus 94 Research. That is Dr. Sfiso Falala. Good morning, Dr. Falala, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Sia. Greetings to everybody. Welcome to day number 3 of the PAMRO conference. I hope you'll find my presentation exciting. I have some great news for you. Let me just try and share it so that everyone can see it. The title of my presentation today is just what the scientists, priests, rabbi, crystal ball gazers, and witch doctors ordered. You might be wondering, what is the relevance of this? It's a PAMRO conference. I will definitely demonstrate why it is relevant and why it is important. In business, there's different types of focus that are made. There's also different types of planning regimes. In a lot of cases, we have 2 cycles of planning. The one cycle of planning involves short-term planning, where we plan for the next 2 days, for the next 20 minutes, for the next month or so. But as business and as research, we also need to think about the all-important plan for the next 5 years, for the next 12 months, for the next 10 years. While it is important to do operational analysis and to provide granular information around that operational analysis, the decisions around, the strategic decisions around what happens over the next 5 years, will we be able to keep our jobs? will you still be employed then? In what industry will you be in? That depends on macroeconomic factors, and that depends on change. And it's important at this conference to begin to address some of these issues. You'll find often that at most of our conferences, we present a lot of technical information, and my presentation does contain also some technical information. Nonetheless, that information remains relevant or irrelevant depending on the context. The first point that I need to point out is that we have found with the pandemic that some companies have lost a lot of employees. In fact, over 250,000 people around the world have lost their jobs. Some companies have stopped investing, others have stopped spending completely and put back or pushed back a number of plans. Planning regimes have changed. From where they used to be, we are planning for the year 2020, for instance, as used to happen even in the 80s and 90s, people are now planning for the next 7 days. But this is all because of bad news. Research does show that bad news is not necessarily uncertainty. Uncertainty is uncertainty. Sometimes it's important to recognize and accept that you can be uncertain or certain of the bad news, and therefore it represents a different type of opportunity. An interesting comparison based on the S&P 500 between the performance of President Obama and President Trump on the S&P 500, the value thereof, starting at 100%. What was interesting is that you will see that at the beginning, there was a kind of not lack of certainty in President Obama, but there was a lack of possibly confidence. And the stock market, of course, varies from day to day, from second to second. And some would argue not necessarily based on lack of information, for they use big data. They have access to artificial intelligence. They know exactly what is happening in the short term and what might happen over the longer term. But these things are happening as a result of bad news. But also, if you look at the difference longer term between President Obama and President Trump, you will see that there's a gap in confidence. There's a gap in sentiment. And this is something that I would want to talk about a lot more as I carry on with my presentation, because it's a huge factor in what happens in our society. Now, the problem statement is that Africa faces a situation where it needs to wake up and smell the coffee. Africa needs to develop more rapidly. It's a beautiful continent. It's a fast growing continent with lots of young people and ostensibly a bright future. But some decisions pertaining to Africa are being held back by Africans themselves. So we had to consult business, we consulted data. And another thing that we had to do was to look at a diverse way of informing ourselves of how we need to shape our future as a continent, given the pandemic, and given the fact that with the pandemic having taken place, there is so much uncertainty around. Some people are not even sure if they will have jobs over the next 24 months. What do we need to do? Who do we need to listen to? And I thought it's appropriate that we should consult experts in religion. Why? Because over 6 billion people in the world are religious. Of these, 4 billion are either Christian or Muslim. Religion is pivotal to spirituality and centrality of human life. So I thought, let's consult them. And initially, I thought I'd speak to them and say, okay, what is going to happen to radio in your view? It turned out to be a very lengthy process, because what I found is that religious leaders are very well grounded in their art, in their profession, and they will tend to speak about things that at first sight appear not to have relevance whatsoever to media. But when you listen carefully, you begin to understand the relevance. So I'm going to share the traditional things that religious people say, plus, and then additionally, go back to the things that they've said about our industry. And there is an amazing and incredible similarity between what they say and what the data says. The data that I used came from the World Economic Forum, from the United Nations, and some data also from Statistics South Africa. And it's incredible that those that rely on faith can make predictions that are similar to those that are made by data. The first short clip is from a Buddhist, a Hindu leader in Johannesburg. If you may listen to what he says.
Ultimately, this is about leading a righteous life. The aim to make morally.
So what he's saying is that ultimately, my question was, what are the three things that you think will shape media and the future of business and the future of this country and continent? And his answer was ultimately, it is about leading a moral life. And then he gives a reason for that. He gives a reason for
the aim to make morally right decisions in order to achieve good karma.
So the aim of leading a good life is to achieve good karma. And I found that in my discussions with him, this seems to be central to the thinking around the kind of future that we can expect.
Ultimately, this is about leading.
Now, excuse me for repeating that. I will proceed on to the next person that I spoke to, Pastor Nomsa Hadebe Shabalal. And I asked her also about the future, and I thought she'd say, well, you know, the internet is going to shape our future. The advent of digitization by March 2022 is going to shape a 5G that is being offered by RAIN, and the additional COVID 5G spectrum that was released by ICASA is going to make changes to how we consume media and how we behave as a society. I was stunned by what she said in terms of what will shape the future.
I'm Pastor Nomsa Hadebe Shabalala from Umusa Community Development Project in Lineda south of Johannesburg, South Africa. There are three things we need to focus on during this critical time. One, calmness. We should not panic about anything, as we know that our Creator liveth, the one who sustained us with the gift of life. Two, persistence. We should be focused and avoid all distraction in order to achieve our ultimate goal. Three, to care. We need to care for each other. We need to be our neighbor's keeper in everything we do. Thank you. Shalom.
So there you have it. Persistence, calmness, and caring for. I didn't expect that. But when cornered to speak about media, they did speak about media, and I'll share some of that with you. Just a word of caution I have with regards to the importance of information. Many organizations are teetering, and indeed, even public organizations such as government are teetering on the edges of making important decisions and delaying those decisions, and hence delaying economic growth. Very often they are saying that they are waiting for more information. The question is, how much information is enough? Can we know everything? Do we want to know everything? Can we afford to know everything? Socrates would differ that we can't know everything. And if we knew everything about the future, would we ever concentrate on what is happening in the present? So information is important. And to get to the gist and the heart of the matter that I'm talking about, which is, let us find out about the future. Let us involve a diversity of groups to tell us about how they see the future. Let us not be high-headed and strong-headed and say we are researchers, we have data. We have many examples where research data hasn't served us well. For a good example is that in spite of all the focus around the COVID-19, we were ill prepared. In spite of all the scientists and the late reaction to the COVID, we were ill prepared. So there are certain nuances in our thinking as a society that we need to take into account. So I'm going to talk about immutable pillars of human evolution, which all research focuses on. A few days ago, there was a talk about sentiment and empathy and so on. But Professor Simon Scheller, who wrote for the World Economic Forum in 2018, argued, and to the consent of her peers, that autonomy is the ultimate quest that every human being should be looking for. Every human being ultimately wants to be autonomous. Whether it is about Granny having an electric wheelchair so that she doesn't have to be pushed around, so that she can go to the bathroom on her own, whether it is about lower pockets of the society finding their own transport, finding independence, not having to depend on other people, whether it is someone who is sick getting well, ultimately a human value that is sought after is autonomy. And you'll begin to see, as I build towards the answer why this is important, education is another immutable pillar of human endeavor. And then equity. Equity means that we need as a society to strive to have a society that is more equal. And the argument that she presents is that if society is unequal, you have humans failing to understand that their excellence should not be at the expense of others. The perception of humanity is very often that their excellence should be at the expense of others. If that happens, then you cannot achieve global peace and social stability. So the argument is that you cannot win in a society where you are excelling at the expense of others. And longevity, that one is there's probably consensus around that the average expectancy of life in Africa is 64 years. In the United States, the average expectancy of life is 79 years. At birth, the average American will live 15 years longer than the average African. The other immutable pillar is emotions and social interaction. What we find is that we study a lot of emotion as researchers. The argument is that the internet and social networking and social media has demonstrated the importance of emotional expression and the importance of self-expression so that the peers begin to understand a bit more about who you are. The importance of having many followers, for example, following you and endorsing you, all these should not be at the expense of others. So we will come back to these at the end because they're very important. Everything that we do ultimately comes back to this. In terms of making focus, you will say, oh, but has anyone ever made a focus that came true? Why should you listen to anybody making a focus? Well, there was the 2020 red herring. Everyone was excited about the year 2020. It sounded too good to be true. There was even Vision 2020, and there were so many outlandish predictions. Unfortunately, many of them were so wrong. One was made in 1967. It predicted by a newsletter called The Futurist then that we will have living apes and they will clean our houses and take care of gardening. And then in 1951, a magazine called Popular Mechanics predicted that by 2020, we will own personal helicopters. And Time magazine in 1966 predicted that no one will have to work at all anyway because robots will do everything. There's nothing in this world that robots will not be able to do. And another prediction that came back that came back to haunt those associated with Nikola Tesla in 1937 was that no one will want to drink coffee or tea anymore. We all know that these predictions were not true, but there were some predictions that were true. And therefore, prediction is in many ways mysterious. In some ways, it is fairly esoteric. Maybe it can dumbfound the use of information, but the argument also is that those that make a prediction do so with access to some information, and therefore there has to be a correlation. Credit cards were foreseen in 1888 by Edward Bellamy. The internet was foreseen in 1898 by Mark Twain. He called it teletroscope. And he spoke about the phone system that is used to create a worldwide network for sharing information. How did he do it? So how do we know if we're going to get an accurate prediction? Digital photography by John Alfred Watkins in 1900, where he spoke about photographs photographs being produced. Now we know these photographs are driving things like Facebook and Instagram. And the prediction was made so long ago. Cell phones. It was Nikola Tesla who got one prediction wrong, but got this one right, that someday people would be walking around with phones in their pockets. Imagine saying that in 1909. Online shopping, fingertip shopping, electronic correspondence machines, that was also predicted in 1967. Movie streaming, more recently, 1987 by Roger Ebert, where he saw us having high definition TV sets or devices, being able to select our own content, order it, have playlists, and do it. So these predictions can actually come true. And of course, smart homes, a prediction that was made by Bill Gates in 1999. And you look at Nest, Netgear, Amazon Ring, now you're able to control the temperature in your home from wherever you might be using your mobile phone. So these predictions are possible. So now let's go back to what we know already in terms of evolutionary change, whether it was predicted or not. In South Africa, we're all waiting for the spectrum, for ICASA, for finally to have the digital migration. I understand that 2 of the analog signals have already been turned off. 5G has been rolled out, particularly rain plays a significant role. Now, this is very important because it increases the speed, it increases communication, it increases access to content, and it makes media more diverse and exciting. So there is rapid fragmentation of content sourcing resulting in custom content. Now, we'll discuss that. The purpose of this is probably not to get too much into podcasts, into streaming and different types of content. But what I must mention, and I found very interesting throughout the study, talking to religious people, was the fact that African television content is growing worldwide. That there was demand for African television content, whether it was Nollywood, whether it was dance content, performing arts, and so on. But there was a focus that African television content was going to grow worldwide. And I found that very, very exciting. As far as the publishing and media companies were concerned, there was a lot of talk about fake news and the difference between setting yourself apart from the purveyors of fake news and being a credible professional outfit, for instance, that publishes online content like newspapers. So it was important for companies in that space to maintain their objectivity. In Africa, the problem is while video on demand has so much potential, the cost of data, the availability, the quality of data. And because of that, pay TV is still a growing area in Africa. And there's a focus that broadband will increase and online video on demand will also increase. And that will then make consumers more accessible, and dissemination of information from an education point of view, training point of view, running a business point of view will become even easier and friendlier. So homegrown content, for example, employs more than 1 million people directly or indirectly in Nigeria, and is the country's second biggest source of jobs after agriculture. Globally, the beacons are that the entertainment industry has seen some change, and TV seems to have lost some ground. For instance, a 7% drop in 2020 versus 2019 in terms of cable TV from 77 million households. However, there were studies that were done to show that television and radio and also print can experience, especially in Africa, a resurgence because Africa is different. And we'll talk a little bit about that. So this speaks about the capstone study, which said that while there were falling advertising revenues and fragmented audiences, which then led people to think that publishing was a dying industry, the reality shows that a lot of the losses were more Western-centric and less so in the developing world, and that in some countries, in fact, the published media was showing potential for growth. In the latest MAP study, for example, in South Africa, we are finding a significant percentage of the population is still preferring to read a hard copy of a newspaper. So Africa does require conferences such as this one, because the way that our audiences behave is evolving in a way that is very interesting, to say the least. So digitization could see a resurgence of the continent in many different ways. Now, enter the rabbis, the priests, and others. Very exciting portion of the presentation. The context is that we have an unprecedented situation, and how do we use this study? I think it's important for planning and for comparing the data and the information that we got from here. As I said, I spoke to experts, and therefore I didn't necessarily speak to 170 or 1,700 people, but carefully chosen experts for their expertise. Now, this is the interesting part. When I asked these experts about the future in general, is it bright? Is it darker? What do you think the future is going to be like? This was very stunning. They, different faiths were relatively optimistic about the future of South Africa, but more optimistic about the future of Africa as a continent, and more pessimistic about the future of the world. Now, I hadn't expected that the situation would show a greater optimism about Africa and a greater optimism about South Africa and a greater pessimism about the rest of the world, because this is against the conventional wisdom. But if you look at the current reality in terms of per capita GDP, you see that a lot of the sub-Saharan countries, sub-Saharan African countries, demonstrate the fact that we have the lowest per capita GDP per capita. But look at what happens just in the next 5 years. Now, if you grow that curve, you go to 2026, this is according to the World Economic Forum, you now see emerging markets and Africa. A lot of these darker green colors are showing growth rates of between 3% and 6%. And if you look at like North America, for instance, and parts of Russia and so on, you'll see that the growth is not as attractive as in sub-Saharan Africa. So over the next 5 years, we are expecting an African resurgence. The African renaissance that we've been talking about is coming. And this is not me saying this, this is according to the World Economic Forum. You can see this graph here is showing the growth in GDP per capita in US dollars. And while if you look at the previous graph, most of this is under 2,500 US dollars per capita, this is getting almost to 8,000 US dollars per capita by the year 2026. So we are poised for growth, and many experts envision an Africa that is going to grow. In terms of GDP, the actual GDP, we are seeing Africa getting very close to $56 trillion by the year 2026. Currently, it's sitting at just under 40 trillion. That's incredible growth. And that amount of change in trillions of dollars can make a big impact on Africa. So we should celebrate. We have a reason to celebrate because the future ahead of us is brighter than the present and is brighter than the past also. So we did ask our experts which form of media is likely to grow over the next 5 years. And we are seeing here the spread by different religions there and the views that I've shown just as mentioned by the various individuals. So television, radio, internet, social networking. So all these are seen as growth areas over the next 5 years. And which platform of media will remain unchanged? Now, in that regard, again, they would mention more or less the same channels. But what this is telling us is that we shouldn't be expecting, because now we have this dramatic rise in social networking, in the exponential growth after the new spectrum that is going to be issued after March in 2022, we shouldn't be expecting the demise for example, of any of the traditional media sources, because they will continue to evolve in a different way, given further that the continent itself is evolving and growing. So we shouldn't be negative at all. Then we asked our experts to kind of forecast what was going to happen. And this is just pluses and minuses in terms of radio. What do they see happening? The Christians are positive, the Judaism positive, also traditional about radio. So you get a good mix from the different faiths, but all in all, where you have no doubt the largest emphasis of positive sentiment, it is around the internet and social networking. There are questions about radio because of the competition that it faces from personalized and customized content such as podcasts. In terms of peace and throughout the world, there's some positive views, particularly for South Africa and Africa. The Islam religion felt that we may not be able to retain peace and that the events of July would come back to haunt us once again. Economic prosperity, a mixture of both positive and negative views. So in general, there were some negative sentiments around propaganda in the media. There was a perception that media can spread incorrect information in the pursuit of certain types of agenda. In general, negative perceptions about social media, again from the Buddhists, because they saw it as containing fake news. And others said that it was toxic. It was a toxic environment. It was charged with negative energy. So there is a downside to social media. As much as it has the power to reach, it also has a downside. So just the salient features then of radio, according to these experts, those are the main issues that were salient, that it covers these things, and surely we need these things. And our experts associate radio with all of these things, positive news, current affairs. And it was actually interesting in discussing some of the more self-styled, some of the podcasts, like the small television operators, that they don't always have news. Television, similar to radio, but there was also caution around things that we shouldn't do. And television was nice in that it covered the whole family, and there was content also for children. The internet had a lot more things as can be expected, including travel, cooking, and so on. And the ability for it to be adaptable in that way made it very attractive. Social networking, again, shared a lot. And as I mentioned earlier, there was the potential for it to also have unverified news. While some news were correct, there was also a potential for some unverified news. The final section here deals with predictions. So what's going to happen? Are we still going to be around the next few days? So they Christian experts said, we expect to be told that COVID-19 is gone. And the nice thing about being able to make a prediction is that you don't have to give a time frame. You can just say it's going to happen, and probably this will come become true. And trade will increase, and trade wars will stop. And that, however, antagonism and political instability in dealing with corruption will continue. And that South Africa, in its quest to get rid of corruption, will face a lot of instability, because getting rid of corruption is going to be difficult. According to the Buddhists, they foresee that companies will no longer be forced to force their employees to vaccinate against the COVID-19. What is nice, which I like, is hosting another Soccer World Cup. Let's hope that it comes true. An increase of tendencies in negotiating and debating important issues. There was a feeling in this particular religion that in Africa, it was a strong man continent. It was either my view or nothing, and that they foresaw a softening of that stance whereby there will be negotiations. And I also love this, that Africa will finally host the Olympics. May that prediction please come true. Traditional healer July riots may recur in future. Africa will remain the same, fairly melancholic there. But I like this one, the rise of female leadership and the fall of African dictatorships. So there is some information that is getting transmitted, and it seems to be resulting in these forecasts. And the traditional healer felt, unlike the Hindu person, that COVID-19, everyone would be forced to vaccinate. So Islam, global warming will continue, and the planet is under severe threat because we're not doing much. Judaism, a complete reassessment of capitalism, complete rethinking of democracy and capitalism to include giving of taxes and income for creating of jobs. So some things there for you to think about: the end of COVID-19 pandemic, Rastafarianism, the rise in the forces of good and evil, helping orphans, the Soccer World Cup, again from a different source, Olympics for the first time, again from a different source. So that's quite exciting. Finally, in conclusion, the focus that have been shared, they confirm trends with regard to radio, publishing, and TV. We obviously have various faiths represented in the industry and our own healthy dose of crystal ball gazes in our industry. Proximity to an area results in more elaborate prediction, as I saw that it was easier to predict about South Africa than, for instance, about Nairobi or Egypt. Consequently, predictions based on data and those based on some esoteric, if not supernatural skill, do tend to be more convergent than they were divergent. And this might be due to the impact of common experiences. The human quest for autonomy, equity, education, social interaction, and longevity is universal. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the point, the quest for those things in all that we do. With AI and big data, decision-making speed is not dependent on certainty. As I demonstrated earlier, that those oscillations in stock market graphs could not necessarily be a reflection of lack of data, but rather a lack of confidence. So what is important in terms of the growth pattern that is predicted for Africa is sentiment and confidence rather than the data, because we have enough data to make it happen. The African continent for streaming will gain increasing foothold, and while the continent is poised to outstrip the rest of the world in terms of future prospects for economic growth, the well-being and happiness of the people will become better as a result. So in order for all this to be realized, and what I did, and after doing this study, realizing that the road ahead is brighter than what we have behind us. In order for all of this to be realized, there's one important request that I'd like to make as a conclusion: African participation in the setting and shaping of agendas and sentiments about the continent. Not necessarily just the data, but also the shaping of the sentiment. Thank you very much. Over to you, Sia.
Great insight there, Dr. Sfiso Falala. Thank you so much for that. Just what the scientists, the priests, the rabbi, the crystal ball gazers, and witch doctors ordered. I love that. The flip side of conventional wisdom. Thank you for that, and love the title. And look, I'm also crossing fingers on that Olympics gig. I hope it does happen. That's Dr. Sfiso Falala. He heads the largest independent South African-owned and Black-owned research company in the country, with more than 25 years of experience as a renowned researcher and CEO. He ensures that a quality-driven process is implemented and sound statistical methodologies are used to achieve actionable market research solutions. Now, his dynamic and innovative approach is designed to gain a competitive edge in the marketplace and ensures that market research solutions rather are achieved through uncompromising professionalism, commitment, and integrity. Now, these are all the qualities that have also led him to become member of numerous business and industry associations. Of course, most notably, I'll say, because we're here, he's the current president of PAMRO, a former chairman of SAMRA, and is also currently a member of SESOMA. Now, he's a seasoned writer for various media houses and has many thought-provoking articles to his name. Now, he has also personally trained and mentored several celebrated researchers and continues to make meaningful contributions to his community and the market industry at large. So we're very, very chuffed and grateful to have you with us again this morning, Dr. Falala. So just a reminder that you can continue to send your messages and comments on our live chat as you're currently watching. Please do so, or you can use the hashtag PAMRO21 on social media. Now, branching from what Dr. Falala was speaking about, let's now look at where Africa stands today in terms of digital transformation. I'm sure we're all very keen to hear more about this. So much change has occurred, sometimes not at the trajectory we'd actually like, but there's also opportunities for even more change, correct? So Joe Otten will be taking us through this in his presentation titled The Pandemic, a Catalyst for Digital Transformation in Africa. Now, Joe is a digital advertising specialist and media research analyst with 3 decades of experience. He's the CEO of The Collective, a digital ad agency, a board member of the WWF in Kenya, the chairman of the Advertising Standards Board, and a past president of PAMRO. So from one president to another, right? Very, very cool. Awesome company there, I'd say. He's one of those people who, again, I look at and marvel and think, when do you actually have time to sleep and rest? But good on you. He has been an active Rotarian for 20 years and also served as district governor in 2019 to 2020. So good morning, Joe. Over to you.
Good afternoon, Sia. It's actually afternoon on this side, and I believe it's still morning on your side in South Africa. I'm actually a bit surprised that you didn't make fun of my bow tie this year, but I'll still make fun of your shirts. I'm surprised that you're not wearing your polka dots today. But thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I know that when you said WWF Kenya, people might have thought that that was the World Wrestling Foundation. It's not. I may look like a wrestler, but I'm more of in conservation. So this is the World Wildlife Fund, but thank you so much for that introduction. And it's great to be here once again. Not getting a chance to see you all, but to be in your space, to be with the members of PAMRO and the registrants of this conference. To be in your offices, your homes, your mobile devices, and wherever you may be as you listen to this conference. What a wonderful conference that has been put together, mostly led, obviously convened by our president, Sifiso, Dr. Sifiso, and certainly led and organized by our executive director, Jennifer. And, it's just, with this pandemic, look at what's happening. We're getting to reach a much wider group of people who are passionate about media research, passionate about media and advertising, and so what a wonderful opportunity to be able to get to come into your space from my space, and just listening to the presentation that came before. What a tough act to follow, and I was particularly interested to what the witch doctors would say. But but it was good to see that the Hindus see the end of the pandemic, and that kind of thing. And I think that's the kind of thing that we want to hear. But the whole idea of predicting, being more predictive than talking about historical, I think is such an important part of digital marketing. And as I take forward my presentation today, that's one of the things I want to talk about, the transformations that are taking place. And these transformations are taking place not just in Africa, but also taking place in the rest of the world. And it's interesting to note that we are moving, beginning to move at a closer speed when it comes to leapfrogging some of the technology and beginning to, catch up with the West, as it were. And so I look at the development of media over time, and it's quite interesting. We started off with branding and people branding their shops and branding their products. This is before before newspapers, print, and everything else came about. And the techniques and tools that were used to appeal to customers and audiences then was totally different, right? And it had specific and distinct ways of being able to appeal to your customers. Then, of course, with the advent of print and newspapers, a new way of communicating came about, where you had images and text, and generally much more predisposed towards a literate, community and a literate society. Then thereafter comes radio, and again, totally different, senses being used here, where it's more about sound and audio and getting people to listen and create pictures in their minds. Again, a totally different set of skills is used to be able to appeal to target audiences. And television comes about, and television takes all of this. It's visual, it's motion, it's audio, it's text, and allows for a tremendous amount of drama put in front of our eyes, especially when they bring in the special effects. And one of the things that you'll note with all of these forms of communication is how there was a separation, a distinct separation between what was fact, so what we call news, and features, and what was fiction in terms of movies, in terms of animations and that kind of thing. And there was a clear distinction in terms, and nobody needed to say this is news and these are movies. However, the internet comes about, and the internet provides a totally different opportunity, again, taking all these wonderful possibilities of print, of radio, of television, bringing it all together. And the first version of the internet was great, and it offered really good opportunities. But then, of course, there was the next reiteration of it, which is what we know as Web 2.0. And Web 2.0 now allowed us as users to be able to communicate back, that there was a feedback. We completed the feedback loop. And now we're able to communicate, we're able to create content and put it out there, and also practically compete with some of the more established media owners. So this is quite an interesting transformation across the board. And as we begin to look at what's happening with Web 2.0, one of the challenges here, and I think this was mentioned by Mr. President earlier, is the distinction between what is news and what's fact and what is creative content begins to become blurred. And so it was coined, recently during the American elections, where they talked about fake news, and this is us, individuals, putting back into this feedback loop using Web 2.0, using our creative skills. However, not making it distinctly clear that this is just creativity and content created for creativity, rather than creativity for news and fact. So as we go along, one of the things we know about digital, that we talk to our clients about digital marketing, and marketing overall, is that it needs to help people, it needs to make people think, feel, and act. That's really what we're trying to do. You want them to think about what they've just seen. You want them to feel a certain way, and then you want them to behave in a certain way that's going to support your brands. And so we talk about a number. Yes, and so going forward, so some of the key things that we talk to our clients about when we're talking about digital advertising, it's just not just digital advertising, but it's marketing overall, is some of the things that it's got to do, including selling, including having high impact with those emotions and feelings and capturing parts of the community, using that ability to talk about a subject continuously. And advertising works because of frequency. And we heard, yesterday, people talking about the creativity, the impact of creativity, and Cantor was talking about this, and how that creativity will then be able to deliver, a higher ROI in terms of changing paradigms amongst the target audiences. It's about using relevant channels, and of course, supported tremendously by social media in today's world, where we're finding that social media is tending to have the highest amount of affinity across all the media channels. Now, of course, the pandemic hit, and last year during the PAMRO conference, we spoke a lot about the pandemic. I think throughout the conference today, we've heard a lot about the pandemic, and I pray that next year during the PAMRO conference, we'll be able to meet in person, and I hope we'll not be talking about the pandemic anymore, or giving data about the pandemic, but like Sifiso, talking about the future and predicting what will happen going forward. But it was quite interesting to see that, and it was not surprised that if we were sitting at home in a lockdown, not able to go anywhere, in full fear of contracting this disease and fatally, that people would spend more time at home and connect more with their digital, with the digital world. And so there was a tremendous rise across digital channels during that time. So imagine most of the men who watch soccer on a regular basis, several times during the week, mostly on the weekends, generally perhaps going to the stadiums or watching them from home. And now suddenly there's no sporting events at all, right? So you can imagine, so it's quite clear that they would obviously move and change their behavior and their media consumption. And it was the internet, and the web and social media certainly took most of that. So, but then going forward, some of the things that we're looking at as well is the evolution of what people are doing on social media. And one of the things that we saw in Kenya when we carried a study a couple of years ago, we saw that people were mostly interacting with their friends and family, not necessarily celebrities, right? We also saw that people were more interested in news content. Let's call it current affairs. So if you like soccer, you want to know what's happening with the stars. If you like fashion, you want to know what the latest is. We also found that a great number of people liked comedy. And this is quite interesting because in most cases, a lot of the time you see people looking at their phones and giggling and laughing. And it just shows that comedy is an important part of content if you want to push this content forward. We found that more people, the Pareto rule comes into play when it comes to creating and sharing content, because most of the creating and sharing was done by just about 19% of the population, 16% actually. Consuming was done by about 77%. This really means that when you're trying to have a campaign that is going to be carried on by the users, it's not all the users that are going to be fully engaged. It'll be mostly around 20% or less that will be engaged and can carry your content forward. So your content has to be something that people want to share with their friends and family, something that gives them a bit more information and makes them laugh. And eventually a small group of them will then be able to share it. This was a couple of years ago. But some of the things that we're beginning to see is that celebrity content is now beginning to play a more important role. The other thing that obviously began to happen as well is we're seeing a tremendous amount of YouTube content consumption. And when you look at what's happening in Kenya, you find that a tremendous amount of time is spent on YouTube. A lot of people generally getting into YouTube and going and bringing out that effect of the moments, what Google called the user moments. When you're looking for something, that time when you're thinking about baking a cake and you need a recipe, At that time, when you're thinking about buying a watch and you want to check out what's out there, you have a problem with your car and you need to fix it. Those are the moments when Google provides, and Google's strategy is really based around that, to get you in there to start getting that kind of information when you need it. However, one of the things that's beginning to happen is the magazine content. What our parents were spending time on reading magazines and getting this kind of feature content is now being replaced by video content. And that's where the influencers are coming in. So influencers are generally giving us features, talking about certain things, including home decorating, including courses, lectures, and that kind of thing. So it's every single genre is taken care of on YouTube. So what are some of the things that are happening at the moment? Let's take a few steps back, go a few years back, and start to look at this. One point, and this is when we're saying we're moving from prime time to my time. When I was growing up, we'd sit in front of the television probably from around 4 o'clock in the afternoon all the way until 11 o'clock at night. And the whole family was there, would generally eat dinner and go back to the television screen, and would all be watching, sharing one screen. But now it's come to a point where everybody's got their own screen, and it's not the television screen, it's mobile devices, it's tablets, it's everything. And they don't necessarily need to come around this, tungsten tube television anymore. But also, there's this whole thing where, during 9/11, government says we'd like to be able to profile citizens because to try to keep you safe from terrorism and that kind of thing. And people rejected that. They said, no, we don't want you to have our data. We don't want you to share this kind of information with you, and we think profiling is wrong. However, at around the same time, social media was gaining prominence. And it was interesting how people voluntarily took our information to social media, put all our data in there, our personal data, almost putting in our bank account details as well. But we put all our data into social media, mostly because we wanted to connect. So there was a certain benefit of being able to do so. But we practically gave away our privacy by getting into social media, spending a tremendous amount of time documenting our lives and connecting with people and all that kind of thing. So obviously, one of the things that started to happen was that it started to gain traction. There was more eyeballs going towards social media, the internet, than was going towards the traditional media. And if you look at some of the data charts that have been provided, I think prior to this presentation, other conferences, you certainly see most media going down, radio, television going down, radio, print going down, television remaining the same because it's more event-based, but internet rising tremendously. One of the things that then happens is that new media attracted the old advertisers. And old advertisers, P&G, Coca-Cola, and some of the large advertisers began to take notice and shift slowly their advertising towards new media. And over time, it's overtaken it, and now it's way above. And but it also creates a tremendous amount of demand from new advertisers. Advertisers, people who've never advertised before, begin to advertise. And this increases the advertising revenue overall. In Kenya, one of the things that we saw, and this was probably about, again, 2 years ago, we saw the internet taking over for the first time in terms of advertising spend. And one of the other thing that we also saw was and this, let's talk a little bit about the evolution, because the evolution, and actually this is not advertising spend, this is more in terms of viewership and access. Prior to this, radio would be at 100%, television would be about 25%, mostly because of power, electricity. Print was somewhere around 25%. Evolution has happened, but internet coming from zero and now overtaking radio. And so these are the trends, and we expect these trends will continue to happen. And so social media also then begins to generate wealth. First of all, Google Display provides opportunities for websites that practically didn't have any opportunities to generate any income, but to start gaining income as long as they had some followers. I know this was fought tremendously by some of the larger players, at the start, because they were not necessarily making as much from the Google Display as they would have thought they would have, though they should have. Some of our media owners here were struggling with that. But the smaller players were extremely excited about it because they were beginning to earn some income. The influencers and content creators began to gain prominence. And now, when you look at the list of the top influencers and what they're making from endorsements and advertising, it's tremendous. These are the new superstars. It's quite interesting also to note that across the world, the celebrities are now beginning to move into that space and fighting with some of these newer, authentic, what you would call authentic influencers. And then finally, what happened also was we've started to see this new media founders, the Zuckerbergs and the Pages and the rest of them, getting on the top of the Forbes, the Forbes listing. And this was quite interesting because we knew they had used our data, but they were certainly not sharing the loot with us. And so privacy became a thing. And so, and now we're saying, you really can't use our data without our permission, right? Or payment. But the privacy debate comes along and gains a tremendous amount of traction. And as it gains traction, the good governance and the boards of some of these larger organizations start to take notice. And indeed, privacy is an issue. Gone are the days when you could basically take every people's information, through and through. It was practically a researcher's dream when you can get data, everything that somebody was doing from morning until evening. Prior to the internet, we had several, codes of conduct that our research would protect the privacy of the respondents and that kind of thing. So things did get a little mixed up, but it seems that we're now coming to a point where some sense is coming back into it. And the boards are now holding their executives accountable for privacy. And now we're moving towards what we're calling the privacy first initiatives. In the privacy first initiatives, you have Google, Apple, Amazon, and some of the larger tech companies taking, initiating privacy first strategies. And I remember, with Apple, on the Apple devices, a couple of months ago, there was a control that would say, would you like to be tracked by some of these pages, or your activity tracked over the internet? And it was for you to say, I don't want to be tracked, right? For you to basically move the notch from yes to no. And now with the latest updates, iOS updates, it has changed this around. And what you do is now it's about changing it from I don't want to be tracked to yes, I want to be tracked. So the privacy first becomes such an important element. Of course, advertising agencies, advertisers, marketers across the board are clutching for straws. What's the future going to look like? How do we predict what's going to happen? And we know that a new dispensation is looming. We just want to figure out what is it going to look like? Well, here are a couple of thoughts. The first thought is that Google and through Chrome has initiated a privacy sandbox. And the whole idea of the privacy sandbox is for organizations and tech companies to be able to come up with ideas, solutions, and initiatives that will help to create a privacy-first environment and still be able to reach people through advertising, right? And reach them in a very efficient and effective way. And so there's a couple of things, including single sign-on, flock, creating cohorts, and things like that are beginning to become more prominent. And I'd say that you've got to pay attention to this. If you're in advertising, marketing, and even in research, you've got to pay attention to this because I believe this is going to provide quite a number of opportunities, especially in the research side. The second thing is media accountability. we practically allowed the social media, internet, and the tech companies to practically run away with this. That a media owner is also providing accountability, their own accountability. Prior to this, it's never happened before, where television stations wouldn't be the ones to say this is how our station is doing. There would have to be a credible research organization, or a credible media currency that would allow, that would be able to provide that kind of data. And now there's an opportunity of bringing this back, where we can have real media currency that is not being created by the media themselves. I think there's always a danger, and we have seen several suits across the world, in the US, in Asia, in Europe, coming across towards the social media providers, around some of the data that they've been providing. And so this provides another opportunity for research. And then, of course, talking about it a little bit more technically, most of our research and the data that is provided, that has been provided by some of the social media companies and tech companies, has always been historical. This is what people are doing, right? So, and looking at it from that perspective of what are people doing, or what are they currently doing, doesn't really tell us where they're going. And when it comes to things like influencers as well, this becomes such an important element, because if you're looking at influencers that are doing well today, and you start to put your money behind them, getting into long-term deals, there is a possibility that they will not be so popular in a very short period of time, right? But if we start to look at more predictive information in terms of not just what are people doing, but what are they likely to do, I think it's only that research that is able to provide that. And going back to Sifiso's presentation, really being able to predict what do people see happening. What is it that what are their tastes? How are their tastes likely to change? How are their viewing patterns likely to change? It's important for us to think about it from that perspective, and again, provides more opportunities for research. And then finally, I think the discussion about declarative or passive research, we've had this conversation for such a long time. And since my time here in PAMRO, I know the discussion was moving away from declarative towards passive. And passive was mostly provided through the opportunities provided which are against privacy, the privacy issues. And so we've been moving much more from declarative towards passive. But I think that with these privacy issues, what's becoming more and more, what will become more and more important in future is declarative data. And as advertising agencies, we truly want to know, where the game is going rather than where the game has been. And, I think some of the sports commentators have also said, if you really want to be great at playing ice hockey, you need to be where the puck is going to be rather than where the puck currently is. And I think declarative data, declarative research, again, puts us back squarely to provide the kind of information that we need to be able to reach our target audiences and to have the kind of impact, and eventually to help them think, feel, and act. So I just wanted to share some of these ideas with you today, and I'd like us to be able to explore some of these ideas. As an digital advertising agencies, we have several needs, around the kind of research that we want and want to put in front of our clients. But it gave me great pleasure to share these thoughts and ideas. And I'm really looking forward to getting any questions if there are, and of course, catching up with you at the next conference. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sia, and God bless.
Fantastic stuff. And thank you, Joe. What makes you think, how dare I mention your bow tie? I always think you're quite the snazzy dresser, okay? And long story short, I'm basically jealous. There, I said it. Thank you, Joe, for that wide scope in digital transformation in Africa. Great thinking there. We really appreciate it. So what did you think about what Joe had to say? Would you like to send him a question? Then do so using the live chat function right here as you're watching live. Or you can also go onto social media and use the hashtag PAMRO21. That's PAMRO, the digits 2 and 1. So straight after this, the show goes on. But for now, it's time for a quick break. We'll be right back. the 2021 PAMRO Virtual Conference. I'm your MC, Sia Sangweni. Now, as we continue with the day, we'd love to hear from you and we'd love to have you as part of the team. So please visit the PAMRO website for more details. That's www.pamro.org, where you can also find more information on becoming a member. We'd love to have you as one of our own. Now, I hope you have your coffee and your snacks sorted, because I do not want any excuses or anything to take your attention away from the rest of our speakers and presentation. There's a lot coming your way, so I hope you're geared up and ready for that. Now, a conference like this, as I mentioned a little earlier, would not be possible without our amazing sponsors. So now, here's a quick word from one of them. On to the next one now. It was author Frank Sonnenberg who said, "Trust is like blood pressure. It's silent, it's vital to good health, but if abused, it can be deadly." It's chilling to hear that, right? So in a world where, even as Joe alluded to a little earlier, fake news mostly prevails, where does that leave trust? And especially trust in advertising. We're looking at trust in advertising, key markets in Africa and comparisons with the rest of the world. Now, this will be presented by Terry Murphy, who's the Managing Director of Nielsen South Africa. This will be an update of the 2015 Trust in Advertising report that was produced by Nielsen. Now, this year, the report has expanded to include 8 key African markets, as well as measures of sponsorship and influencers. So, good afternoon, Terry. Thank you so much for being here, and over to you.
Thank you, Sia. You've always got such a good vibe. And good afternoon, everyone. It's really lovely to be here today. I have to say that compliments to the PAMRO organizers and the speakers. You guys are absolutely so top-notch, and every year it gets better. And this year I'm actually fairly intimidated by the quality of the presentations, especially some of the ones that I was watching yesterday. Good work, really proud of us. Anyway, okay, so just a little about Nielsen for those of you who don't know us. We're a global company. We operate in 60 countries, or plus 60 plus countries worldwide. And we have been doing this for somewhere over 70 years. We focus in the media space, and we operate really from audience measurement and currency measurement through to the measurement of ad spend and analytics. And we also do these kinds of surveys, which are lots of fun, and I find, quite a nice, almost qualitative view compared to some of the currency research. So I'm excited to present this to you today. Right, so today I'm taking you through what we call the TIA report. As Sia said, it is run every few years. The last one was run in 2015, and the one before that in 2013. And this year's fieldwork is still, warm off the press, should I say. It was run in August and September this year. It's a big study, so we've only just got to the point where we've completed processing all the data and getting it ready for release to the industry. And just to repeat, which is quite exciting, just to repeat what Sia said, is that we have 2 new types of advertising, which are really becoming more and more relevant to marketers today. And that is a whole section around sponsorships and also around influencers. And again, we've increased from the 2 African markets, which were run previously, to 8. Alrighty, so the TIA study it's very comprehensive. It is quite a big database, and it is run in 56 countries across 7 regions, those being Middle East, India, Africa, Asia Pacific, EU, North America, and LATAM. And today's presentation will focus on some of the results from the 8 African markets. So the 2015 study only included South Africa and Egypt. So this is the first look that we've ever had at the big Central and Southern African markets of Kenya, Tanzania, Ghana, Zambia, and Botswana. And as I said, it's still fairly new data, and we are at Nielsen working out how best to get it to you should you be interested in it. We have a big sort of data set which we could give to you in our Clear Decisions software, which is a really great analytics tool, or we could make it available in our iPort dashboarding software, or even in a sort of a million slide deck if that's what you wanted. So at the end, I'm going to put up an email address, and we'd really love to hear from you if you're interested in some of the results, and also just give us some inputs into what the best data format would be for you, what would be the most useful. Okay, so starting off with top line overall trust levels across the African countries. And here we see, as I said, it's absolute top line, absolute averages, and these are measures of either trust or trust completely. And what we see is the countries with the most general trust levels are Nigeria and Tanzania. And then there is generally less trust in the... Am I not? I'm sorry, am I not sharing? Terribly sorry. Can you see it? Can you see it now? Is it the full? Okay. Oh dear. I wish you'd said something a little bit sooner. Anyway, we're going to get into the data now. So here we go. So as I said, the top two ranking countries in terms of overall levels of trust are Nigeria and Tanzania, and then the lowest two are South Africa and Egypt. And we've noticed, while we're getting into the data recently, that South Africa, compared to the other African markets, tends to very much more closely mirror the global averages. Something interesting to look at. And the interesting trends come out in the other African markets where really it makes for some lovely analysis. Okay, this slide is, I suppose, almost a hygiene factor on the face of it. It shows the average trust levels on the whole across all African men and all African women. And what we see is very similar levels of trust as a whole. However, in a couple of slides' time, we'll start to see a breakdown where we see some interesting insights coming through. This is the generational perspective, where we look at, from the Gen Z on the left all the way to the silent generation on the right, and trust appears to increase with age. So what we have is a general upward trend, apart from the boomers that tend to buck the trend, which have similar levels to those of the millennials. On the next slide, unparcels, if that's a word, unparcels the male-female bi-generation, and this is where you start to see the patterns emerge, where men's trust levels are much more standard, and when it comes to women, we see that the younger women have much lower levels of trust, which increases with age up to the silent generation, the 60s plus, the 65 pluses. So the next section examines how the advertising types perform in terms of two measures, both in the report. So one is trust of the different platforms, or trust in advertising by media platform, and the other one is action taken as a result of being exposed to advertising. Okay, so here's a ranking. It's a lot. I don't expect you to read the labels. I know they're tiny and fuzzy, but I just wanted to show the bigger picture of the range. So what we have at the top is a 93, and at the bottom score is a 58. And I'll give you the details of the top and bottom performing six next. But just to point out that time and again, we obviously, and I think it's intuitive, and we know that word of mouth and advice from a friend or somebody that you trust is pretty damn close to 100% trustworthy. I would imagine that the 3% that's missing is because most of us have just that one dodgy friend who will give us bad advice. So here are the top 6 recommendations from people I know. Brand sponsorships in sporting events, second. Ads on TV, third, which is still great to see, really strong TV trust. Then brand sponsorships, obviously outside of sporting events, branded websites, and TV program product placements, which is again a really nice new and becoming more and more relevant form of advertising in our landscape today. These are the bottom 6. Now, I just want you to kind of commit these to memory for a second while I go to the next slide. But starting from the right-hand side, where this is the least trusted form of advertising measured. So text ads on mobile phones come in least, followed by ads served in search engines, ads on social networks, ads on mobile devices, online banner ads, and online video ads. Keep that in mind and have a look at this. So what this slide is telling us, this is a measure of I have never taken action as a result of being exposed to ads. And what we see is the top ranking one is text ads on mobile phones, followed by ads before movies, online banner ads, and so on. So it's not surprising that media types which aren't engendering trust or aren't felt as being as trustworthy are less likely to get action. However, I must say that this does differ, and I'll point it out a bit later, it does differ by the type of category you're looking at, and obviously by the demographic and within each country. So I'm showing you the top level stuff. Right, so here we see the pattern starting to emerge between men and women. And we see within the channels that three stand out very much more for men than women. And it's not really surprising, but it's sporting events, TV program, product placements, and brand sponsorships. Women are very much influenced by referrals from friends and ads on TV. So if you're wanting to capture those elusive, young, untrusting African females, perhaps this is where you start to look for some insights. Again, please don't try to read the data or the labels. I know it's tiny, but this is just to show you a picture. And I thought fascinating that this is the global data compared to the Africa cut, which shows global averages significantly low, or should I say African trust levels across all advertising types consistently higher than the global averages, with the only exception of recommendations from people I know. Okay, so apart from the media and the advertising types and channels and platforms we've been looking at, we've also have a section that looks at the tone and content and themes of the actual advertising messages and how these resonate across the different groups. So here is a ranking of the message types that resonate the most. And what we see is the top 4 really stand out head and shoulders above the rest, these being real life situations, health themed messages, family orientated, and value orientated. Interestingly, if you look right at the bottom, less than 2% of Africans said that they did not respond or resonate well with at least one of these themes. So it looks like we've captured a good set of themes in this data. The health themed message also kind of sticks out, and I can only imagine that it's probably largely impacted by COVID and the times that we live in, and that the advertising, the pharmaceutical or health-themed messages are very relevant, as you can imagine. Also interesting and surprising when we looked at the data was that celebrity and athlete endorsements don't rank quite as high as we expected them to. Okay, so now when splitting the data by gender, again, you start to see these clear skews emerging. So men differ particularly in their resonance with sports-themed, competitive, high-energy action, athlete endorsements, and ads with a sexual theme, which is not at all awkward to say, but as females, far more interested in children and ads on centered around those of more of a sentimental nature. In comparison with the global scores, again, the general pattern is the same. However, the African resonance levels are overall higher, with the exception of ads that contain humor and those that are pet or animal-centric scores. Another thing which I thought was interesting was that none of these scores ranks higher. So those that claim not to resonate with any of these themes is slightly higher in the global data than in the Africa data. So where have we got to? We're almost at the end, and I just wanted to give you a picture of what data is available, because it's pretty hard to do it justice with so many countries and so many different cuts of the data. But we've looked at so far the top line insights in the African countries as a group, and the differences between the gender and the generational data, and a couple of the global comparisons. What we also have is the the action taken and the trust in all the different types of platforms, as well as a full set of resonance data. But as you would expect, the resonance data and the platforms will differ very much when it comes to the kind of category you're talking about. So a telco ad compared to, for example, a retail ad or a fashion ad will be looked at in the different platforms will come out and profiles will differ quite significantly between the categories. So the set of categories that we've measured cover most of the ad spend, not all of it, but really I would hazard to say around about 80 to 90% of all spend. There's also a section which we've included in privacy, or around privacy, and how people feel about apps measuring them and whether they're even aware of things. But we haven't included this data in today's presentation for obvious reasons, but it is available if you want to have a look at the actual deck. So the last two slides which I wanted to show you were just to pull out a couple of the differences which I was talking about when you look at the categories. So this particular one is about pharmaceuticals and how people are looking for data or looking for information. And so for pharmaceuticals, recommendations from people I know, again, is the strongest. Consumer opinions, online ads, and TV ads rank the highest. But many sources of information appear to be sought by people before any pharmaceutical purchase seems to make place. And I suppose this kind of makes sense to us if we consider the amount of messaging and possibly even confusion and wanting to find out what's going on around COVID and so on. So these sources are very strong in both the online and the more traditional environments. Now, I've just pulled out one other, which is a completely different category, being fashion. And again, fashion tends to be a very subjective choice. So there are many trusted categories because of that. But you can see very clearly magazines, billboards, and ads on social networks play a much larger role here than they do in the other product categories. So that brings me to the end of the slides for today. And thanks for listening. And as I said, please get in touch with us if you want to have a look at the data. The results are almost ready. I would say early November. In the next week, we'll be ready to send out and respond to people. And I put Hank's email address there if you want to mail him, but you can also send information to me and we can respond for access to this data. Thank you very much.
Great stuff, Terry. Thank you so much for that. And thanks for being with us. A reminder there to continue sending your messages and comments on our live chat as you're currently watching, or using hashtag PAMRO on social media. Now, time now to look at the PAMRO 2021 country reports. In my mind, the next group of speakers probably sit in a dark room with 12 screens in front of them each. Behind them, a wall of maps and cloud pictures connected by dots and strings. One of them, just for good measure, sitting with a cat on their lap. Now that I think about it, just sounds like they're evil villains and not expert professionals. So never mind, scratch that. I'd like to rather introduce Cameron McClure, Celia Collins, Puven Moonsambi, and Khafida Wilson. Cameron graduated with a BCom marketing degree and now has over 15 years of experience working in the media industry here in Africa. He has worked across a wide range of industries and has traveled the continent extensively. He has also been very instrumental in establishing Omnicon Media Group's Africa's network as managing director in South Africa and is an asset to the business. Celia, on the other hand, had the advertising bug bite her back in 1998 when she joined a creative agency. From there, she's worked in the likes of a global agency to start their Africa division in about 32 countries, being appointed MD of Carrot and receiving the PAMRO Achiever of the Year Award back in 2007. Now, she is currently Omnicom Media Group South Africa's Africa General Manager, who then, meanwhile, has been in the industry since 1999 and has worked on key accounts. Now, when I say a long list, I mean a long, impressive list. Let me take a deep breath. Including the likes of Nokia, Barclays Bank, HSBC, RMB, MTN, Dell, PPC Cement, Shell, and let me just tell you, that's not even half of it, okay? Right now, he's currently serving as account director at OMD South Africa. And lastly, but definitely not least, is Khafida, who has more than 23 years experience in marketing, trade marketing, sales, and through the line media planning, buying and strategy across multiple markets in Africa, and today serves as account director at OMD South Africa too. So without any further ado, over to you, team.
Thanks, Sia. Thanks for the warm welcome, and great to see all the names I so love to see every year at the PAMRO Conference. I'm really missing that interaction, and I can't wait for all of us to get together again and actually have the one-on-one conversations that we need. But I know we don't have much time, so without ado, I'm going to start the presentation. So I will cover the country research and the demographics. I'll then hand over to Khafida, who will look at consumption across the country reports which we've collected. She will then hand over to Cameron, who will do a digital deep dive into all of the countries. And last but not least, to Pooven to look at one or two trends and what's happening on the continent. I would, however, like to say thank you to everyone that has participated in putting the country reports together. It's a massive task and a massive ask to ask all these research companies to actually provide us with the data. So key research in Angola, Ipsos, media planning services in Nigeria, along with media monitoring services in Nigeria, SAF from Zimbabwe, Kantar, and we've also got some Nielsen spend studies. So unbeknown to them, some of the countries have given us some of their spends. And last but not least, Media Metric. So to start off on the countries which we've collected this year, we've managed to collect 21 countries, which is quite a lot of countries. Last year, we only managed to get 18 countries. What these reports do actually detail, and you won't see the full deck in our presentation today, is country statistics, media consumption, who the research house who provided the data for us, how old the actual research is and how the research was conducted, media consumption, and last but not least, if there are advertising spends available. These reports will be available on the PAMRO website to paid up members, so please all become members and go and have a look at these reports. They are in depth and do provide a lot of information for marketers and advertisers. So let's get into it, and hopefully not to bore you with too many figures, but I try to keep it succinct and to the point. So let's have a look at population first. We know there's a massive growing population on the African continent. If I look at Nigeria, we have 226 million people within Nigeria, which is massive. When I started doing some of the reports, I think we were sitting on about 154 million. We are then followed by Ethiopia with 112 million people, then that of Egypt with 100 million people. Massive, massive growth on the continent. From the research provided, you'll see that there's been a slight decline on the All Media Product Survey or establishment surveys, but there has been a massive increase on diaries, television ratings, along with diaries on radio as well. That is the most updated information which we have in the report. You will also see from the graph shown on your screen, from advertising spends, we're able to get them. Of course, they've got to be purchased from the research provider. And then from a segmentation perspective, we've got a multitude of segmentations. We heard yesterday from BMR on how they're looking at putting a succinct segmentation together. And I think it's something which would really look good on the African continent if we were able to look at a common segmentation across. What you'll see is we have ABs to Ds in some countries. Some countries are still on LSMs. Some countries are using SECs, and some of them are using SEMs. It would also be amiss if I didn't pull out the male-female ratio. Of course, being a female, I looked at the female opportunities. So if we look at Angola, more females, 52% versus males at 48%, along with Morocco, 51.46%. And then last but not least, Uganda, also topping the scales with more females than what there are males. We know that by 2040, that Africa is going to have the world's largest working age population, surpassing India and China. What does that mean? It means that the rest of the world cannot ignore us. It fundamentally means we have got the growth within the youth. We know that the African continent is fueled by the youngest population. We see 50% of Africans below the age of 20. And if we have a look and compare that to China, where below 20s only account for 28%. If we have a look at the slide, we'll see that between the ages of 16 to 34, 67% of them seek out product stories which project the right image. They also, what you'll see is an increase in education. 45s only at 27% versus the 16s to 34, which is now sitting at 40%. With all of this, we have seen a massive growth in urbanization within the youth. It's actually doubling in growth, and 80% per capita actually sits in urban areas now. We also know that 53% of the income sit within the youth within Africa. But it would be amiss if we didn't actually have a look at the reality on the African continent. And some of these things we actually don't see coming through in research. We talk a lot about African tax and Black tax and how that affects people's lives. We know for some it's quite a burden, but for others it's a duty. We know education is key on the African continent, and to upskill yourself is pride within the family. We also know there's a lot of pressure from families and from parents to partner with the right person on the African continent. Religion, doesn't matter what religion on the African continent, there is a lot of pressure to conform to standards of particular religions and how the family is actually viewed on that. Also, one of the big pressures from a female perspective is reproduction. How does that actually come through? And we see massive growth. So it plays a big role within families. Responsibility for own success. So this is one that we see. We don't have massive amount of funding from global people to actually start our businesses. We're entrepreneurs and we are the people who are going to make our own success. Another one, and last but not least, is weddings. We don't only see traditional weddings anymore, we see white weddings, and it's seen as a success metric within the family unit. What I am going to do is play 3 ads for you who have really taken the African reality and brought it to life on the African continent. The first one being is the Black tax, and I'll play it now for you.
Dumela tau. Sekolo sena sa Manase se a tura. Dikgomo tsona di phetse hantle. Empa pula ena e tlisitse mathata le marulelo a nnela. Mme re a koloba. Stofo sena se tsofetse. Hey, tau, utlwang monna, utlwa ho thonyollotse. Monna ke hodile jwale.
Madaung, halo.
Sheba mona. O le boloketse yona.
The next one I'm going to have a look at is the essence of responsibility for our own success.
Guru and 2 glasses, please. The whole idea of this business is to sell to home and foreign markets.
I thought.
Yes, uncle.
What's behind you?
Nothing.
Exactly. Do not go into this business if you don't have it.
Uncle, don't worry. It will be well. Have a drink with me.
This is the big league. You can't start a business with your chicken change, yo.
Well, the big league's about to sit up and silence a new major player. Barman, 2 more bottles of water, please. He's paying.
Boss, yeah, it will be impossible to get customers in this area.
It's always impossible until someone does it. And that someone is us. Cheers to our first customer.
Joanna Mustafa, today's news. What do you say to those who believe your company will not survive on the international scene?
Well, the same thing I said when they said I should not go into the business in the first place. That's, you know what? Why don't you guys join me for a good or two? And maybe I'll tell you.
Hey.
Whatever they say, always remember that it's your journey. Own it. Enjoy it. Gouda. Own your journey.
Last but not least, and last one before I hand over to Hafida, is all around weddings and the pride of weddings in the various families.
My father used to say that the poorest man is not one without money, but the one without friends, which is why I could entrust him with ensuring that all my friends were there on my wedding day.
Consider it done, son.
Dad, this is not everyone on my list.
I invited all those people on your list. I didn't call it a wedding. I told them that you were in serious need of their help and that we would gather here today to see how we can help you. And these are the people that showed up. Now go on and celebrate with your true friends.
the taste of true friendship. It all comes together with a castle.
So really tugging at the hearts and minds and taking the African reality into account. Yes, they're alcohol brands, and maybe you would think I like my alcohol, which I do, but really tugging at the hearts and minds of consumers. Thank you very much. I'm going to hand over to Kofido, who will take you through consumption and COVID-19 trends. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so very much. So I'm going to be talking to you a little bit around consumption and what that looks like across the continent, and what the effects of COVID has been on consumption across all of our markets. So if we look at the GDP for Africa across all of the countries, you'll see that in 2020, the GDP fell to the lowest it's been in Africa. However, it really isn't all doom and gloom. If you look at the gray line on the graph, that really sort of illustrates that Africa, there's a slow but steady recovery, and that there is hope for our brands and for what we need to do across the continent. The other thing that we need to remember is, there were other impacts that COVID had besides on media and consumption and spend. It was how it affected families, it affected their well-being, it affected job security, as well as unemployment. And that directly relates to how consumers purchase and consume brands, and also advertising in the world of marketing and media. If I look at what the media investment looks like across the globe, actually, you'll see that Asia Pacific and North America are the leading COVID-19 recovery markets or areas. Latin America's probably dropped the most, but they are expected to recover in line with EMEA by 2022. If we look further into the global trends, you'll see that worldwide media spend continue to grow, specifically being dominated by digital, with about approximately 54% share of spend in 2021. If you look over a 6-year period, starting from 2017, way before COVID, and you look at the growth that was slowly being achieved across the continent, you'll see in 2020, as COVID hit us, we went into a minus percentage. However, looking at 2021, we've recovered really nicely at about 11%, with a projected or forecasted growth rate of about 8% by 2022. So if we look at television in Africa, so something very interesting, and I wanted to make this my opening statement, that Sub-Saharan Africa is said to be the world's largest, fastest growing TV market. Now, in a world where digital is growing and there's more consideration around digital media, I think it's important for us to understand that TV, radio, still very much plays a really important part in the media ecosystem. According to the research and market that's been done in the markets, there's a projected growth of about almost 36% for Africa and the Middle East, looking specifically in markets who focuses or have heavy TV audiences, and that is migration to the video market as well, or the video option as well. I think the biggest thing for me and the biggest takeout is really that the biggest driver of this growth by 2023 is Sub-Saharan Africa. And I think that's something to consider in our strategy, in our planning, in the way we mix our channels when it comes to our communication and our strategy. So I think TV is definitely still a really important medium to contend with on the continent. And if I move on to a little bit of insights that we've pulled out. So we looked at an estimated average TV reach across 21 markets in Africa, okay, of over 800 stations, sorry. We're looking at 73% estimated reach. That is quite a significant percentage if you think about it. So for us, what we've looked at or what we've seen is that after seeing record highs in a hard lockdown, TV is stabilized, but linear is starting to lose share to streaming. And that's something for us to keep top of mind. In important markets like Ethiopia and Tanzania, you'll see that satellite is still very big, with 86% of homes having access to satellite in Tanzania. Nigeria, Kenya, being a little bit more dynamic. I think, look at the growth numbers, over 1 million satellite homes in Kenya, over 7 million homes with satellites in Nigeria. That says a lot. That says that this is still a medium to contend with. Okay, going to radio, which is sort of the big conversation at the moment in a world where, in a world filled with mobile phones, tablets, computers, online options, people often ask us, why radio? The answer really is very, very simple, guys. Radio is still the widest reaching footprint, reaching millions who have no access to internet and even inconsistent supply of electricity. Radio is being listened to via mobile, but also in the traditional sense. So radio is still very, very important, especially for that bottom end of the pyramid or that pyramid that is emerging. Radio is proving to be an invaluable source of information, especially around COVID-19 in our markets. We've also seen that as much as there's been a migration to online learning, there are also certain markets who have their students turning into airwaves to get tuition and to get access to their studies. So if I move on to print has been sort of classified at the moment as very much a dying medium. However, we've seen a clear migration to online sites for news, information, and also access, I guess, to the rest of the world. Another thing to consider is that there's tactical opportunities within print, and we've seen that more and more with our retailers and the collaboration with the publishers. I think in a nutshell, the important thing to understand is that there is an entire media ecosystem that needs to be utilized to be able to get not just the return on investment, but also the impact and also that resonance with your audience. So even radio speaks to the hearts and minds of our consumers, and they create that emotional connection, which for us is really, really important. We also need to consider almost a channel agnostic approach. So look at the partnership, look at the synergy between media in that ecosystem and where digital plays. So Cameron's going to touch on a lot more of the detail around digital, but I think the point is understanding what that ecosystem is made up of and then tapping into that and utilizing that. I'm going to hand over to Cameron, who's going to take you through the digital. Thank you very, very much.
Thanks, Kapila. Great afternoon, everyone, and thanks for the opportunity. I'm just going to give you a very brief snapshot of the digital landscape across the 21 countries for which we've provided reports. And I'm going to start by looking at access, and then we'll take a deeper dive into the various platforms, some of the pitfalls, and some of the latest news and information around social media globally. So the 21 countries, unfortunately, couldn't all fit onto one slide. So I've split it into 3 slides with 7 countries per slide. And we're starting with the largest countries by population. The red bars, the total population, the orange, urban population, blue, mobile connections. You'll notice that in South Africa, there are more mobile connections than people. And that's as a result of people often having more than one SIM card. The yellow block's going to show you the smartphone connections, the purple internet users, dark blue active monthly social media users. And then that trend line is showing you the social media penetration relative to the population. And I think you can see that although social gives you critical mass across Africa, not all things are equal across all countries. We're seeing almost half the population active on social media platforms in Egypt, and 42% in South Africa. Kenya is catching up quickly and growing rapidly at 20%. But the other markets, Nigeria, Ethiopia, Tanzania, and Uganda, there's still a lot of growth there. And it shows you the scale that we'll see in the future. Even Nigeria at 16% is still 33 million people, which is more than the total population of Angola. So a significant audience, and a wonderful environment in which to advertise, and against optimizing against many metrics with a variety of innovative formats, some of which link to purchase in more developed markets. Looking at the next cluster of countries, we can see North Africa seems to be a lot more connected than sub-Saharan Africa, with more than half the population active on social media platforms monthly. Ghana, 26%. Interesting enough, we'll get to it, but internet connectivity speeds in Ghana are the highest on the continent. I think it could be the proximity to Europe and access to the undersea cables. But Angola, Mozambique, still very small, 9%, and a lot of room to grow. Interestingly, in those two countries, the smartphone penetration is quite high. So, there seems to be quite a big audience outside of social that we could potentially tap into, either through direct publishers or programmatic deals. And then the last, Mauritius, 73%, only 1.2 million people on the island. And I think internet access is far ahead of some of the countries inland. Lesotho, interestingly enough, and I think probably because it's surrounded by South Africa, 25% of their population active on social media platforms, and Tunisia, a significant amount. But I think the next slide tells an important story, and it's looking at the growth across these 21 countries. So first, from a population perspective, we're looking at anywhere between 2 to 3% growth annually from a population point of view. Mobile connections, it seems to have almost been saturated in a lot of the countries. We're seeing a decline, in Senegal and in Lesotho, versus the rest of the markets. But when we look at internet and social media growth, it's in the 25 to 40% ratio. So all indications are that in time, we're going to have more affluent, more urban, more connected audiences that are engaging across social media platforms. But looking at the connection speeds, I mentioned Ghana earlier, South Africa also, these are average download speeds and measured in megabytes per second. South Africa and the North African countries outperforming a lot of the countries. But you can see there, the likes of Zambia, Uganda, Algeria are really hamstrung, and that would inform your media strategy and what creative you use. Obviously, countries with lower connection speeds, display is probably a better format than video, although you're not going to get the same sort of engagement. The top graph is looking at devices and what people use to access. Africa is still very much mobile first, although interesting to see in Angola and in Ethiopia, there's almost parity in terms of mobile versus desktop access. And then lastly, COVID's really accelerated it, but the rise of e-commerce in Africa is something that a lot of brands are looking at taking advantage of. It is in varying levels of development across Africa, and the bottom graph is showing you really those people who have claimed to have either paid a bill or made an online purchase. And I think Kenya's leading the way there, because they were first to market with a mobile money solution that I think enables payment more conveniently, securely, and really easily. Taking a closer look at social media, it's not just Facebook anymore. There are a plethora of platforms available to people across the continent. And we're seeing, I've only just pulled out South Africa and Nigeria stats here, but we see people on average, people having 7 to 8 social media accounts, and they're spending a hell of a lot of time, 3.5 hours a day, and accessing it frequently. I think TikTok has seen probably the fastest growth in the social media space, and I think it's also becoming more inclusive. I think when it launched, it was very much the 18 to 35 year age group, but there have been a lot more people adopting the platform over time, and there's a wider variety of or demographics available for us to talk to. But TikTok in particular, I think, is a success story. There are a lot of really big brands, the likes of Nike, Adidas, Pepsi, who are building communities there. It's a new way of engaging with like-minded people, consuming like-minded content, and really a great place for influencers to generate content to support your brand, which makes it seem a little bit more authentic. And talking to Terry's presentation, also slightly more trusted. So if we take a look at Facebook, I'm sure everyone's seen the news of the Facebook whistleblower. It does deliver audiences at scale efficiently, far more efficiently than other premium environments. But the brand suitability and safety have been called into question, and it's something that all social media platforms need to really take note of and ensure that they're building friendlier communities with content that is more progressive. And that talks to wellness. There's been an increase in the need for people to take a break from social media because of the impact that it's having on their mental health. And I think that's going to be key to how we talk to our audiences going forward, and particularly in the messaging and the content that it is adjacent to. One other thing that has always been a challenge on Facebook is viewability, and that leads into the next slide, talking about your technology stack and the importance of tracking, measurability, attribution, and transparency for your clients. So just some of the primary players from a verification point of view: monitoring brand suitability, invalid traffic, viewability, and whether or not your ad has been served within the geographic confines that you were targeting. We mentioned programmatic earlier. There are a number of DSPs and SSPs with inventory that has a good reach across the continent. Google's DV360 is one of the primary ones, followed by Scheme, the Trade Desk, MediaPal, and although not necessarily a DSP, Teads is also giving us a great opportunity across the markets in the quality environment, where your inventory is far more viewable than on other platforms, and also click-through rates a lot higher. Finally, ad serving, Google's Campaign Manager and Seismic are your key platforms in Africa, enabling the management, serving, and trafficking of an ad across all digital properties. Talking about Teads, that's just giving you an indication of the reach across the markets. I mentioned a much better viewability rates, a wide variety of publishers and content available through which you can look, and also some really cool innovative ad formats that increase impact and notability. And we're seeing a 4 times click-through rate versus other platforms, and a much higher viewing time as well, according to Moat. Finally, we looked at how many people are buying online. I think it is a low base still in Africa, but the potential is massive. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, COVID's accelerated that. And it looks like e-commerce could account for 10% of all retail sales by 2025. So a massive opportunity for us to exploit, but it does come with its challenges. There are a lot of, across the markets, a lot of e-retailers popping up. They are facing a lot of competition from global players, the likes of Jumia, Takealot, Macro, Piki, etc. But I think the point here is there is a long way to go from a measurement point of view. They keep the main thing, and it's all about taking the orders and getting the deliveries out. The absence of physical addressing in Africa is a big challenge logistically. And the infrastructure from a retailer point of view does vary in terms of the granularity in which your products are, the product pages are hosted, and how you're able to track that so that you can optimize towards sales. But I think to the point of keeping the main thing, the retailers are still developing their media capability. They are still very much a retailer and don't necessarily have the resource that is focusing on the platform as a media owner. And then there is, it varies across the countries, but also a lack of capacity and technical expertise, and tagging up sites and linking to the likes of Google Analytics to ensure a sort of streamlined flow of data that we can act on. So thanks very much for your time. I'm going to hand you over to Puvin Munsemi.
Red light, green light. Red light, green light. Okay, I promise no spoilers, guys, no spoilers at all, right? But okay, I just want to, talk about one of the latest crazes we have at the moment now, right? So I know there's quite a few of us that actually haven't watched it as yet, so I'm not going to give too many details about the show itself, but just from a numbers perspective. So we all know about Squid Games, launched by Netflix. I think it was kind of like early September that the show did come out. And in just over a month, they had about 111 million views globally, right? Besides Netflix itself, we can see across YouTube, there's like tens of millions of views happening there, and also across the millions of impressions within the social media, right? So basically what this is telling us is that brands really need to keep their ear to the ground to make sure we know what's happening around us. So Vans was one of the lucky brands that got involved from a content perspective. And, they had over an increase in sales of over 7,800%. But besides that, we see other brands actually tapping into the content within the show, right? The likes of the Budweisers and the Visas using elements from the show to actually reach out to the consumers as a whole. I'm not saying that, this is the only opportunity that is available. We've experienced similar content shows that have actually done a big job in terms of driving the consumer beyond just the TV shows. And us as marketers, we need to be more and more involved and keep up to the trends of what's going on around us. One of the other key things that actually popped up when we were going through all the research was the growth of the influencers. So, you can see in the past 5 years, there's been almost a 670% increase in the investment towards influencers as a whole. Lot more brands that we're working with on a day-to-day basis are actually splitting out their media budgets. So, historically we used to get budgets across TV, radio, print, and digital, but then we're seeing that line item coming up for influencers as well. So brands are actually turning to these influencers to become their brand ambassadors. They're actually creating a roster of influencers across nano through to mega influencers as well, and keeping them ongoing. The beauty about it is that with the influencers, they're very authentic in what they bring across. So the followers that they have really believe in the individual that they're actually following on social media. I think for us as marketers, there's various ways that we can actually compensate the influencer. Even it being like free samples from an unboxing perspective, or offering discounts for their followers, be it with a particular hashtag and a code. There's ways that we can look at building them up. From a channel perspective, yes, influencers play across all social media channels, right? But definitely Instagram is the one that's becoming the most popular at the moment. I think another key factor within influencers as well is that influencers don't need to stay within their lane, right? So as an example, like Kevin Hart, we all know him for his comedy and his entertainment that he brings through to his followers. but like more and more, we start seeing him playing within the fashion arena and, promoting clothing and accessories and so forth. So, it's something for us as brands that we need to think about and, how we can potentially grow this channel. And I think the other key factor, which, a lot of the speakers have actually tapped onto it throughout their various presentations, is that the growing youth population within Africa, right? We all know they are strongly playing within social media. And, these are the key channels and ways that we can actually start appealing to them and speaking their language to a large degree. Okay, I know that was short and sweet. Hopefully I didn't take up too much time, but on behalf of myself and my team, I'd like to thank you all for the opportunity again for allowing us to present. Sia was 100% right. We all did sit in a dark room for the past 2 months going through data. But again, would like to encourage more and more of you to become members so you can get an opportunity to actually go through the decks that we've put together. Thank you so much.
Let's face it, TV isn't going anywhere. It's going everywhere.
Do you, boo-boo?
And there's only one way for you to get there. DSTV Media Sales. We go all out every day to get your brand out to the over 11 million households enjoying DSTV and GoTV's world-class local and international entertainment. From TV to video on demand and streaming to digital, you name it, we do it all. Through innovative communication solutions customized to suit every brand and product. Whether you're looking to sponsor a great program, activate your brand with a sporting event, or place your product in a top show, we'll help you make your brand famous. Interested? Then contact us today. Because when it comes to media, we're all over it. DSTV Media Sales.
Thank you so much, team. That's Cameron, Celia, Puven, and Khafida. Now, how have you been finding certainty in these uncertain times? Have you even been able to do so? Has it been maybe through stockpiling loo paper and baking banana bread? Maybe have you been one of those diligent people, rather, who from the beginning of working from home, you've been wearing long pants and your work shoes, even though you're at home? Or maybe you're one of the people who've just taken it in your stride. You're the one in the work WhatsApp group sending TED Talks and thinking innovation and rethinking what you do in these times. Well, there's no right or wrong. We're just all trying to make the best of the situation. Well, Stacey Frew, though, is a learner and founder of the Stacey Frew Foundation, who'll be sharing what she's found on finding certainty in uncertain times. Stacey is the current face of the African Union and International Labour Organization's 2021 international campaign for the elimination of child labour, #EndChildLabour. Now, she's a South African international multi-award winning child author and activist. Now wait for it. What were you doing when you were a teenager, specifically when you were 14 years old? I think at that time, my sole priority and focus in life was collecting skinny jeans in a wide variety of colors. Shocking times. Stacey, on the other hand, is 14 years old. Well, she's casually busy writing books. She actually wrote her very first book titled Smelly Cats at age 7. And so she's since dedicated a very large portion of her life to reaching out and inspiring and edutaining people of different ages across the whole world. One of her books is actually available in Braille and in DAISY format as well. And right now she runs the Stacey Frew Foundation that reaches out and donates books, food, computers, and other items to children and care homes across South Africa. So throughout her foundation, she also honors other African children who are impacting their communities by awarding them during the annual African Children of the Year Awards held every November in South Africa. I say it again, what were you doing at 14 years old? My goodness. Over to you, Stacey. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me on the show, well, not show, in this wonderful event, and thank you for the organizers. So I'm just going to get my presentation on, and hopefully I will be able to share everything with you guys. There we go. Starting. Should be able to present everything. Okay. There we go, if I can just get this working. Cool. Good day, everyone. My name is Stacey Frew, and you would have heard me being introduced as a 14-year-old international multiple award-winning child author and activist. And yes, I am that girl who wrote her first book titled Smelly Cats at the age of 7 without her parents' knowledge. Since my debut, I have dedicated a portion of my life to reaching out, inspiring, and educating people of various ages and backgrounds across the world. It is such a pleasure to address you all today on an issue concerning the media. It is honorable for me because my first encounter with the media was when I was 7 years old and I had to do a newspaper interview for the Saturday Star just after I had written my first book. And many interviews that followed prepared me for the different types of engagements, from meetings to pre-recorded sessions to live television, radio interviews, and other public endorsements. By the age of 9 years old, I became a talk show host for my own YouTube online channel dubbed Children's Television South Africa and CTV SA for short. I interviewed key persons with motivating stories and hosted my favorite show titled the Know Your Countries. I have come to understand the power of the media and the influence of its constant presence. The media today under democratic states is free. The media is free to select the stories that they cover. These stories are often what their demographic considers important or interesting. Therefore, the media is often perceived as an influencer of public opinion and can be called things like biased and unfair. However, the media still plays a crucial role in keeping people entertained, educated, informed, and even distracted. To some extent, many would agree, but then again, we trust you to provide us with this information. For example, current affairs. The media educates our people, and the media influences our thoughts and decisions. I speak towards the traditional media because social media is, a whole other story with a lot going on. If we choose to focus on the poverty gap in our country, the loopholes in our educational system, the extent of neglect and abuse, fraud and corruption in our country's economic strength or lack of, don't you think that the public would become more self-aware? And all this can be achieved and communicated to us via the media. If I were to address my age mates and learners, my focus would be on the media exposure to trending subjects and possible career choices or career dangers. And with the modern day social media, it won't be too hard to persuade my peers to get into the industry, the glamorous influencer life. I will speak on the learners' behaviors towards teachers and institutions, and many good as well as bad sides of our educational system. I would appreciate how the media has focused on ensuring that both positive and negative attitudes that come out of school environments are filtered down to homes and workplaces, at the same extent as they do to things that happen in workplaces and other aspects of our lives. The lockdown. The lockdown put our media organizations under immense pressure, seeing as they had to take up the role of not just updating people on the pandemic, they also had to update people on feeding schemes that were going on within our governments, socialization issues, opinion sharing, and psychological support, just to name a few. The media spoke for our experts, the children, parents, employers, and employees. I remember doing a couple media interviews during the lockdown and being so surprised by their zeal to hear what I have to say as a learner undergoing the online schooling system, which was a very, very tough period of time for many of the learners. And many of us who are still, doing this 1 day on, 1 day off system, it is still very confusing. And many of us are still trying to adjust, even though it's been over a year. And during that time, the media's role was questioned and their flexibility was questioned. Millions looked towards the media to comfort us as we were isolated. The presentations today have surely delivered facts and the figures on the role of media for both businesses and governments and the individual. I would assume that our country's media is well trusted and respected too. However, they could be trusted further if they were more represented by gender, race, and culture. And permit me not to single out an aspect of culture and include language. I speak no local language, but there is a lot of English in the media. So much so that in times of the peak of the pandemic, I often found myself wondering how people who do not speak English or languages that are popular on the media were coping with the particular updates. I warn that just like the speakers of minority languages, young people in South Africa have a great appetite for media, but I feel like they are increasingly consuming online. Of course, due to data affordability and lack of mobility, television and radio still have a long, long life. As much as I urge media content suppliers to drift online, they also have to consider that the cost of data and connectivity when they produce online content. I know for sure that our education is affected beyond repair because teachers will not be able to complete curriculums. This could have lasting implications for our future. As the literacy activist, I urge the media to call upon organizations to encourage the coverage of educational content. Media should make the reading of books, magazines, newspapers, etc. fashionable. Just like, wearing certain clothing items would be fashionable, let's get our kids to read. Please offer educational programs to learners because the current mode of studies, otherwise known as the new normal, is depriving our children of the full learning content. Here again, may internet providers also look at how they cost internet access to certain educational websites. There is encouragement in being a South African child, more so in being in the media sector. Although I want to urge the next generation to be patient and hopeful, I warn the media to create more spaces for young people in their content. We have very many children in advertising, drama, and acting alongside adults. The media has to follow in the footsteps of PAMRO and include children in discussions and deliberations. Children's opinions matter. Now, before I close off, permit me to say a big thank you to the organizers of this event for giving me the platform and a chance to speak to the big media players. Please check out my social media pages, and I hope for us to connect in the future. I thank you.
If you work in marketing or advertising, you know what it's like. You're constantly under pressure to create high-performing campaigns and maximize ROI. On the plus side, you have access to more useful data about your audience than ever before. But the truth is, most marketers have neither the time nor the right tools to uncover the golden nuggets they need from a vast amount of available data. Until now. Telmar's Insights and Statistics Solutions help you uncover key insights about your target audience quickly and easily. Now, you can combine all your data into a single resource that allows you to uncover precise and hidden audiences in seconds. You can identify optimal audience segments for each client and campaign, then match those segments to just the right media channels. You can create professional reports that summarize your findings and generate meaningful data visualizations that export to slides at the touch of a button. Ready to supercharge your advertising campaigns? Contact Telmar.
That was Stacey Frew, ladies and gentlemen. Stacey, amazing, amazing stuff. Not only was that interesting, but I have to admit, a little bash to the ego, making me want to reassess my whole entire existence and what I do with my life. At this rate, Stacey, I see you working with Elon Musk, ruling the world, just casually by the time you're 30. But you know, ladies and gentlemen, Stacey has reminded me of the great and poignant words of an oracle and guru of our times who once said, "I believe the children are our future. Teach them well, let them lead the way." No, never mind. I just wanted to give you that earworm, stuck with you for the rest of the day. Time now for the moment I know a lot of you have been waiting for. Time to announce the Best Paper Award, amongst other things. Are you ready for it? I hope you are. As we wrap things up, I'd like to introduce Dr. Sfiso Falala, again, President of PAMRO, to do so, as well as close the conference for us. Dr. Sfiso, over to you.
Thank you very much, Sia. And ladies and gentlemen, please join me in congratulating Sia on an exceptional conference once again. He's been totally outstanding. I have received lots of positive comments about his professionalism and his relevance and the way he has conducted himself. So thank you very much. Let's put our hands together for him on a job well done. We are going to be announcing the ISA winners from this conference. We are just excited that we've had the opportunity and occasion to run this conference and to have shared the kind of papers that have been shared. So that's very exciting. We started out talking about the upside of down, and we realized that it's important for all of us as a country, as a continent, to always be objective and to ensure that we are positive in our outlook. Our judges for this conference are Filipa Oliveira, who is also a board member, Major Tikiwa, who is a board member, Nyatela Mhlongo, and Celia Collins. Would like to sincerely say, judges, thank you so much for the wonderful work, very challenging work that you had to do in choosing papers that, in your opinion, deserve an award as the best paper. We have three categories of winners. We have a gold award, which is the best paper. We have silver, and we also then have bronze. I will be announcing those shortly, and would like to reflect on some of the innovative approaches that we learned about, and the fact that we've seen WhatsApp being used, for example, to do groundbreaking work, which has the ability to transform the livelihoods of poor people. Certainly enhancements in research tools and the sharpness of research tools through technology and artificial intelligence came through at this conference. We saw some papers that dealt with market segmentation, which is a very important facet of the research that we do. I was very interested to listen to the paper that focused on digital anthropology. I thought that was quite exciting. And when Joe Orton came and he spoke at length, and he spoke about some of the ethics, for example, and morality that is involved as far as the digital economy is concerned, I found myself reflecting on that and what is being done with our data. In that regard, I think we all have an obligation in our businesses to act at all times in an ethical and professional way. In terms of the impact of the power outages, Brenda Wortley, I enjoyed the paper. It's a fantastic paper. I am currently under load shedding, so I'm not enjoying that. I'm a little bit disoriented. But it was pertinent, and the timing of your paper couldn't have been more perfect. So thank you for that presentation. We listened to a paper from the Netherlands about how we could pool our resources as an industry and work together. We must recognize the fact that we're a relatively small industry, and it's important to work together. I did emphasize in my opening address that the days of confrontational competition are over. What is important now is complementing each other and using respective strengths of different organizations and different individuals to achieve the ultimate goal of economic growth for Africa and for our countries. So thank you very much for that. PAMRO annually awards a bursary to a deserving student in media. And this year, through a process of searching for the appropriate person to award the bursary to, we came up with the name of a brilliant child who's doing first year at Vega, whose parents cannot afford to put it through Vega. And PAMRO has decided to pay a bursary amount of 60,000 Rand towards her tuition. So congratulations to Olive Ganku, who is the beneficiary of this year's bursary for PAMRO. And thank you to all of those that were involved in the search for the winner of the bursary. With regards to the Baobab Award, every year I, as president, have the opportunity to recognize and acknowledge certain individuals within the industry that have gone far and beyond the normal call of duty to make things happen, to put us where we would like to be. And this year I've identified 2 individuals, not just for the work that they did this year, but for the work that they have done over many years. We have a PAMRO Baobab Award, and the winners will receive for this year a certificate, and we'll also be able to talk to them. If they're in South Africa, they'll also have lunch with me, which is kind of nice. I look forward to the lunch. This year, the first winner of the PAMRO Baobab Award is Josiah Kimanzi. Most of you know Josiah. He is a former president of the organization. And he hasn't been well lately, but he's still fighting for PAMRO and still supports us. So we love him and we care about him a lot. And our thoughts are with him. He's a deserving winner of this award. The second person who has worked tirelessly in media research and done so much work without acknowledgement and apparently without much gratitude is Brenda Wortley. So I'd like to personally award the Baobab Award to Brenda this year, the second one, for the sterling work and the commitment to the values of the industry. Every person that presented this year a paper will receive an acknowledgement, a PAMRO Conference paper contributor certificate. And now looking at the best papers, we had a very close contest between several papers that were presented during the course of the week. The bronze medal would go to the paper that was presented by Gary and Henrik, which was entitled Essential Innovation. So congratulations to Gary and to Henrik. Well done on your paper and your very, very striking methodologies that you are using to do research for the BRC. And the second announcement is the Silver Award, which is the second best paper. This one goes to the paper that was entitled The Pandemic, a Catalyst for Digital Transformation, a paper that was presented by Joe Orton. Congratulations on your outstanding paper, Joe. And what is left now, ladies and gentlemen, is for me to announce the best paper overall. It's a very difficult task, as the judges will tell you, to arrive at this because it's all context related and depends on what is going on at the moment. But by perhaps a narrower margin then, you might think the best paper for this year was the paper with the title, let me just find it, Multi-Dimensional Consumer Segmentation. And the paper was presented by Professor Karel van Aert. So congratulations, Prof. for your very insightful and well-researched paper, and for using multidimensional methods to get to the kinds of segmentation that you got to. So well done on that. So finally, ladies and gentlemen, thank you to all of you for attending the conference. It's been wonderful having you, and we look forward to you taking part in our future conferences, perhaps as a speaker, if not, then definitely as a delegate. And a reminder once more that you're welcome to join us. Go to our website, pamro.org, and go to the section that deals with membership and become a member of the organization. Thank you very much. Over to you, Sia.
Great stuff.
Plus94 Research was founded in 1998 by its main shareholders, Sifiso Falala and Tirani Mabunda, and has since grown to become a world-class and full-service market research company. We design, implement, and interpret research surveys in South Africa and at an international level. Our service is benchmarked on responsiveness, creativity, and practicality. We specialize in both quantitative and qualitative research methodologies. Surveys are carried out face-to-face, by computer-assisted telephone interviews, online, via email, observational techniques, focus groups, and in-depth interviews.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Falala, and congratulations to all of the winners, but specifically Prof. Karel van Aert, Professor and Research Director at Bureau of Market Research. We have the Prof on the line. You absolutely deserve it. Here's just a few moments. We'd love to hear from you, Prof.
Thank you so very, very much for this opportunity, and I'm incredibly humbled by the award. And what's really great for me is that this appears to be an affirmation of the validity of the segmentation model that we've been developing. But I just want to also say thank you so much to Dr. Falala and the Market Research Foundation that greatly contributed also to the model, and also to the marketing industry in South Africa for a lot of cooperation, criticism on the model really being appreciated. And then also just here, I'm incredibly impressed by your facilitation. Really, really well done. Highly professional. Also, thank you so much to Philanto for organizing everything, and also for Amara today for actually chairing the session. This has been really, really highly appreciated. And I just heard from the Bureau of Market Research is that they also say they're overjoyed, and thank you so much for the opportunity and for the award. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Prof. Another congratulations to you. Thank you so much for your kind words. But can you believe it? Just like that, 3 days have wrapped up for the 2021 PAMRO Virtual Conference. I cannot believe it. It is time to say goodbye. I'm no Pavarotti, so I'll stop now. Thank you so much to each and every one of you for being with us over the past few days, for watching, for engaging, and for staying the course with us. We hope you've enjoyed every single step with us, where you've been able to learn. So the conversation is far from over. You can continue using hashtag PAMRO21 on social media to keep in touch with us, and also visit the PAMRO website for more information or to become a member. Thank you again to all of our speakers. You were incredible, and we appreciate all of the research and insights you've shared with us. Thank you to the team who made today happen, everyone behind the scenes who've been putting everything together and manning all of us. You guys are absolute rock stars. We wish we could have been together, but hopefully next year we'll be telling a different tale. Thank you so much, though, again, to our partners who have made today and this whole conference possible. So thank you so much to Borderless Access, to DSTV Media Sales, to Nielsen, to Telmar, Ornico Plus 94 Research, and to Ipsos. And it would be remiss of me, absolutely remiss of me, if I didn't take this opportunity to say happy birthday to someone who's no stranger to the PAMRO family. So happy birthday, Jen. I hope you have a stellar rest of your day. So ladies and gentlemen, Worms and Dannies, Gogos and Goginas, this has been the 2021 PAMRO Virtual Conference. It is because of you that we continue to make it the most well-attended conference in the industry. Until next time, my name is Sia Sangweni. It was incredible to be your Master of Ceremonies. Have a fantastic rest of your day.
The Pan-African Media Research Organization started in 1999 with representation from only 13 countries. Today, 22 years later, the Media Research Organization boasts over 800 members and counting across 27 countries on the continent. Celebrate PAMRO's research expertise across Africa by becoming a member today.